Hey guys, welcome back to another EGP video. Today, me and my EGP team have figured out who is the killer at the famous case known as Murder in the Library. So, without further ado, let's dive in to the video. Well, I know you all might be wondering, how did Mrs. Horsehair, the owner of the house, die in her own mansion? Well, let me show you guys what my team and I have pieced through together on how it all happened that night. At 7 p.m., Velvet, the butler, Charlotte, the maid, are preparing for when the guests will arrive later at 7:30. Then, as the maid went upstairs, she suddenly heard angry voices coming from Mrs. Horsehair's room.
If you marry him, you stupid little fool, I'll cast you off without a penny.
Then Miss Daphne went out of the room crying and went back into her room and she slammed the door. Miss Charlotte was in shock after what she had heard from that argument. Then she goes into her room to change into her new uniform. At 7:15, Charlotte went down the stairs and that's when she overheard what Jeffrey was talking on the phone with one of his gambling companions.
Can't you wait a bit longer? The old woman's so damn mean with her money. I'll find the money somehow.
Yeah, as you guys can see, Jeffrey was very fond of roulette, but his mother disapproves and tries to keep him from gambling. While Charlotte was preparing food in the kitchen, guests started arriving at 7:30. That evening, Reverend Truelove, the vicar, entered the parlor, followed by the neighbors, old Mr. Archibald and his son, young Archibald, followed by the last guest, Dame Christie, a lady novelist, that were joining the weekend as guests. While Charlotte was preparing food in the kitchen, she wanted to peek out and see the guests that were arriving, and she saw young Mr. Archibald looking very dashing in a blue velvet suit. So the butler saw things weren't going too well after he served drinks in the parlor because Miss Daphne looked like she had been crying after she spoken a few words to Mr. Archibald in the hall. That young gentleman looked pretty unhappy too, and Mr. Jeffrey looked extremely angry. The vicar saw what had happened at the hall, but anyways, he also thought it was pleasant how Mrs. Horsehair's friend and the lady novelist were having a pleasant chat. But he did see a certain person acting distinctly unpleasant, which was Alice B. Topless, the actor of Oscar Oscarson. As Charlotte was about to serve soup, she noticed things weren't going too well as she saw Miss Topless looking a bit annoyed because she and Miss Daphne were wearing the exact same dress. Or she literally saw Oscar having an intimate conversation with Mrs. Horsehair in front of her. So the vicar and Mr. Archibald tried to keep the conversation going, but it was quite a relief when dinner broke up at about 9 o'clock. The ladies retired to the parlor for coffee and the gentlemen went to the billiard room. Since dinner ended at 9 o'clock, the butler decided to serve port to the gentleman in the billiard room. However, Miss Daphne came up to him and asked him to send this note to young Mr. Archibald, which read, "Darling, meet me in the conservatory at 9:30. I have a plan, desperately," said Daphne. The butler went to the billiard room to serve port, but saw Miss Topless leaving the parlor and entering the ballroom, and saw a young man that he was sure it was Oscarson because he was wearing a white suit. And the gentleman in the billiard room had poured and played a game of snooker. The first game ended just before 9:30 and both Oscar and young Archibald excused themselves, saying that they had urgent matters to attend to. And if we recall back, Velvet, the butler, gave a note that was given by Miss Daphne to Mr. Archibald, which had some huge suspicion as he leaves the room. Jeffrey went to the library to write an urgent letter, and Mr. Archibald and Vicar went to the parlor to meet with the ladies. But the conversation was still about murder, and the Vicar found it distasteful and left after 10 minutes. At 9:45, the maid went to the parlor to collect the coffee cups, and she overheard loud voices in the ballroom that sounded like Mrs. Topless. And suddenly, the door opened and Mrs. Horsehair came out. She looked rather embarrassed on seeing her, and she said,
Oh, Charlotte, I was looking for my book. Do you know where it might be?
Unfortunately, she did not. And Mrs. Horsehair mumbled something about looking in the library and went to that direction. The maid decided to collect the coffee cups very slowly because she couldn't help listening into the conversation. But then she heard a door slam in the hall, followed by the sounds of footsteps crossing the hall. Then the front door slammed. She finished collecting the coffee cups and went outside the hall, but no one was there. The Vicar had already enjoyed a quiet stroll and a quick smoke outside. And that's when he saw the door slammed and Jeffrey went outside wearing a dark blue smoking jacket. Imagine he's wearing it. And Vicar invited him to join him, but he only grunted and strode off into the shrubbery. The church clock chimed 10 and he decided to go inside to take his leave. But he was aware that someone was following behind him, and out of the corner of his eye, he saw a flash of something blue. But before he could do anything, a hand pressed over his mouth and he felt someone strike him with a heavy object from behind, and everything went black. And as the maid crossed the hall, she heard a piercing scream. It came from the library. She immediately went to the kitchen to find the butler and told him.
Velvet! The library!
The maid faints as the butler runs past her and he sees Miss Horsehair lying dead on the floor. And he saw the billiard door and the window in the library was open. There are cigarette stubs found in the ashtray, the kind that Jeffrey smokes, and a port decanter was found broken on the floor. There was also a large silver candlestick that was missing.
Everyone! Mrs. Horsehair's dead at the library!
The butler asked for help around the house, and Miss Daphne and Mr. Young Archibald came first to witness the scene, followed by Mrs. Horsehair's friend Myrtle Berry and the lady novelist along with old Archibald. Oscarson appeared on the scene, and followed a few seconds later, Miss Topless. Don't mind one of our actors, he's a bit glitchy today. And lastly, Jeffrey, who came in last, who came in rushing, calling for help.
Help! The Vicar's unconscious on the terrace!
Well. After all that has happened, our EGB team has decided that the killer was young Archibald and Daphne as an accomplice. You might be asking, how? The killer must have inside knowledge about the house, and it's impossible to kill her alone without an alibi. And you guys might be wondering, how did the Vicar got unconscious? Well, we saw the scene where Jeffrey went outside angrily. The timing where Mrs. Horsehair and Jeffrey go to the library is perfect for them to have another argument, because most people are too busy doing their own thing. So the argument must have been about Mrs. Horsehair's marriage, and Jeffrey left angrily as he drops the port decanter, which he drank the port already, thus being drunk. He went to the shrubbery outside to blow off some steam and saw the Vicar, and that reminded him on how the Vicar was also an advisor for Mrs. Horsehair's marriage with Oscarson, so he thought he forced his mother to agree to the marriage to change his will for the money. He got so mad, he went outside the library and took the large silver candlestick and knocked the Vicar, and became sober after realizing what he has done. This shows that he was not the killer because both incidents happened at 10 p.m. He can't be at two places at once, and he's also at a disadvantage because he doesn't have an alibi. And that's all for our video. If you guys still have any questions, please ask me and my teammates on what you guys might be wondering. Maybe we might have some plot holes, so if you guys have any disagreements, feel free to debate with us and tell us who you think is the true killer.